And we have a tremendous number of people. Over 400 people are Zooming in with us today. So welcome to all those people who are here today. So what we're going to do this afternoon is we've got Emily Pickett, who is the Valid Advocacy Coordinator. Is going to talk about the project, the Justice for All project, with self-advocate and project participant Wayne Begbie. And then Wayne is going to officially launch the film, and the film will run for just over 17 minutes. I think it's about 17 minutes and 34 seconds to be exact. Oh, I might be wrong there, but that's about it. And then after we've had the viewing, will be followed by a panel discussion with experts in the disability rights and self-advocacy field. We'll have some time for the audience members to put questions to the panel, and you can ask questions by writing it in the Q&A box that's provided to you there. So if you have questions, just put them in the box and we'll get to them if we can at the end of the video and the panel. I encourage you to share the film with other people and read the project report, which you'll be able to find on the website, and we'll give the details of the website as we finish. We'll also close the session at 4:30 and provide you with a link to the project website and some other contact details as well. Okay, I would now like to introduce Emily, I believe is going to be the next speaker. So thank you and welcome everybody.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you everybody for coming along today. Valid's Justice for All project was an action research project that listened to people with intellectual disability who are involved in the criminal justice system and brought to life their stories, ideas, and recommendations for change. The project was co-designed and executed with 16 people with lived experience. We developed a self-advocacy peer action group, a film, which you'll be seeing today, called They Will Use My First Name, and a project report. The name of the film came from one of our lived experience experts who talked about how dehumanizing and undignified it is to be referred to by either a number or a surname in the justice system. This was something that actually all of the participants in the project agreed on. Two of the most important questions we worked with as part of the project were, how do we do disability rights with and for people with intellectual disability involved in the criminal justice system when nobody really knows what those rights are or how to get them? And secondly, how can we do disability rights with and for people with intellectual disability when they're subject to systems that ignore or remove their rights? Over the course of the project, the words we heard over and over again were degrading, dehumanizing, torture, abuse, bullying, terrifying, confusing, scary, naked, dirty, cold, dark, and stripped. In listening to the stories of people with lived experience, we learned a lot about how systems cause further trauma to people who've already experienced enormous trauma. We learned that it isn't ever enough to just listen to those stories, but how we listen and what we do after we've listened is the key to doing a better job of disability rights work. We know that lived experience work with people with intellectual disability involved in the criminal justice system is pretty much in its infancy in Victoria, and we know that we need to develop ways that we can do this work. What the Justice for All project has shown us is that we can listen to people who don't usually have a voice. We can find ways of making sure that people with lived experience contribute to policy conversations. We know that sometimes people are listened to by individuals who care, but we also know that we need to do systemic, deep, and radical listening. The Justice for All project, I think, is the beginning of some of that listening. So I'd like to introduce you to Wayne Begbie, who's here. You know, things are blurred, so it's a bit weird.
Hello, my name's Wayne.
Wayne was involved in the Justice for All project. Wayne, could you tell me, what was it like working on the Justice for All project for you?
It was real good, me working, making the film. It's real good for me to let people know about the film I made to other people to tell people the rights about disability people with disability, to know the right to being in jail or out of jail or what system, or going to the police station for a police interview, to let them know their right about their rights about disability, to know their proper rights about disability people with disabilities, to know their rights about the law. And the right about the law is the smart thing to learn about the movie. When you watch the movie, you'll know the right about what goes on in jail and out of jail. And it's a good movie to watch, and I'm happy to make the movie.
So how did it feel for you being involved in the project? What did that feel like?
It felt real good. It felt, made me happy. It made me think about me being in jail, coming out of jail, making a movie. Made me wake up to myself and then go back to jail. Made me listen to other people with disabilities, just like me, because I have severe brain damage, and I learned more words off other prisoners and other people who made the movie with me, to listen to their story, what they made the movie with, to listen to their right to the movie, to let the people know in the world about the rights of this.
Thank you. Why was it important to you to be involved in the film and in the project?
I got into the project and the film because Emily asked me to come into it, to let me know my rights of the movie, to let me know the values, how smart they are to make a movie. This movie for free to people who want to watch the movie. This movie goes through nearly an hour. It's a good movie to watch. It lets people know their rights about their disability rights, being in jail and out of jail. Let their right to know about the court system. Let their right to know about medication while you're in jail to take, or for the nurse and the doctor. This movie let me wake up for myself, let me learn taught me about the disability rights in the world. Different jails have got different laws. The disability, except the laws will be all the same right through the whole part of Australia. This movie is so good to watch, and that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Before we view the film, I'd like to thank some important people and organisations. It's not going to be like an Oscars speech. I'm not going to thank everybody I know. The biggest thank you from Valid is to the 16 people with intellectual disability and involvement in the criminal justice system who worked with us and who told us their stories. At times it was long, painful work, and we acknowledge that speaking up is hard and it can be really scary. Thank you to the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, in particular the Office for Disability, who provided the funding for the project. Thank you to the Centre for Innovative Justice at RMIT, the Office of the Public Advocate, and Dr. Claire Spivakovsky from the University of Melbourne for their time, expertise, guidance and commitment to the project. They Will Use My First Name is an immersive documentary film which is best viewed through a virtual reality headset. Today we'll view it on a flat screen, but we'll scroll around the screen for you so you can see the environment inside the film. If you have headphones or earphones, it would be great to plug those in because the sound quality will be a bit better for you that way. Also, I need to give you a bit of a content warning for the film. There is some distressing material in it and there's a bit of offensive language. If you think the film might be distressing, please feel free to go and have a cup of tea, switch off and come back when you're ready. So Wayne, would you like to just say?
My name is Wayne Bigby.
Now we're going to watch the film. Do you reckon we should watch it now? Do you reckon we should just watch it now?
Yep.
Let's watch it.
The last comment in the movie was from one of the participants who said, all we need is love and guidance. And I think that's a bit about humanity, isn't it? So I'd like to now, if you want to put your comments in the chat box, we're going to have the question and answer session. And I'm going to, we've got some guest speakers who are going to be panelists first, and then we're going to have the questions and answers. So I'd like to hand over to Emily. We'll be introducing and facilitating the panel session and the question and answer session afterwards. So welcome again, Emily.
Oh, thanks so much for that, John. I think we're all having a little bit of a teary moment at Ballad today. I certainly, every time I watch the film, I think I see something different in it and I feel quite teary every time I watch it. Thank you, everybody, for watching it. Thanks for sitting through something that's difficult and painful, and thank you for your appreciation. I'd like to introduce our panel today. So firstly, we have Justen Thomas. Justen is an experienced self-advocate and lived experience expert who works all over Australia. He has experience appearing in the media before royal commissions, and he was a part of a delegation to the UN in Geneva in 2019. Secondly, we have Dorothy Armstrong from the Centre for Innovative Justice at RMIT. Dorothy is also a lived experience expert, advisor and peer support worker. She's worked on a range of projects and in 2018 won a Victorian Disability Award for her advocacy work. Thirdly, we have Emily Dash, who's an artist, writer, producer and disability advocate. She's worked extensively in film and television and was directly involved in the making of They Will Use My First Name. Emily won the 2021 RAD Impact Award, which was presented to her by Margot Robbie. Last, we have Natalie Wade, who's a prominent disability rights lawyer, disability advocate and activist. She has a background in law reform and international human rights. In 2016, Natalie won Australian Young Lawyer of the Year. So I'm going to my first question. I'm not sure if Justen is with us at the moment. So I will direct my first question in that case to Dorothy. Just wondering if Dorothy, hi, sorry, I couldn't see your little box. Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us. You're having a moment as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dorothy, you work at a university. You're an absolute lived experience expert. You do a lot of public speaking and you've gained a lot of respect for your work. Could you tell me a bit about how your work's changed your life?
If I can stop crying, I'll
try. Do you want me to come back to you?
No, that's okay, Emily, because yeah, I don't think the tears will stop. I would really love to comment about the video, but just not at the moment. How has self-advocacy changed my life? Okay, so firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I am very privileged to be here today, and I feel really privileged to have witnessed that video. And I certainly can understand and appreciate how difficult it is to witness But that's exactly what people need to do. Find the courage to bear witness, because these atrocities do happen, and they happen to people like Wayne, and they happen to people like me here in Australia, here in Victoria, and we don't hear about them unless and until a way is made by people like yourself, Emily, to finally talk about things that have happened. So for me, how self-advocacy has changed my life is that, you know, for the majority of my life, I didn't have a voice, and that's for lots of reasons. I'm the youngest of 11, and I grew up in lots of kind of stuff, and I have an acquired brain injury, and I believe my acquired brain injury stemmed from family violence and ongoing violence in my life. I identify a lot with what was talked about by each person in the video: experiences with police, experiences in custody. And, you know, 14 years ago, I was non-verbal. I had so much brain damage, I wasn't able to communicate with another human being, and I actually entered prison that way. And apart from all of my life experiences, that was one of the most terrifying experiences I had, being in a prison, not being able to communicate with anybody. And it wasn't until, you know, sometime after I came out of prison and I started to, and I didn't even know I was becoming a self-advocate, but I started to sort of talk about issues more directed towards women, like domestic violence and homelessness as a result of domestic violence and things like that. And then but I was terrified all the time. I only ever used my full name is Dorothy, but my nickname is Dottie. I would only ever use my name Dottie. I never ever disclosed my full name. I never allowed photos or anything like that, because I firmly believe that the police would, you know, come and get me. I'll forever be in their database. And I was always terrified that if I spoke out about things that happened to me, that I would be found and things would happen, because they do to people who speak out. And it's taken a good probably 9 years for me to be able to, you know, say my full name, and for people to see me visually and to have my photo taken, things like that. But how has it changed my life? It's completely changed my life. I went from suffering, being completely isolated, having all of this, for want of a better term, justice experience, if you will. And I lived every day in just deep shame and remorse about the life I lived, very isolated. And when I was approached by somebody from the Centre for Innovative Justice, for the very first time in my life, and this was, I think I was like 41, 42 years of age, I was asked about what happened to me, and I knew that the woman asking me actually really wanted to hear my answers. And that was a turning point in my life, that at 42 years of age, for the very first time, somebody asked me the things that had happened, and they really cared about what I had to say. And so I'm aware there's a lot of people and a lot of other panelists here, and I could absolutely talk for a really long time, Emily, but I think in a nutshell, from that point, you know, I would be, I would start to talk, you know, at, you know, legal centres or Victoria Legal Aid, or, you know, different conferences, and I would be paid with gift cards. But then the day came that I was actually asked or offered employment with the Centre for Innovative Justice. And I think, looking back in hindsight, I have been shown by the example of the people at the CIJ that I have value. I started to be valued as a human being, and for the first time in my life, I was believed about the things that happened to me, and that things started to be done about those, the experiences that I had. And that really is the primary work of the Centre for Innovative Justice, about creating a better experience for people, for marginalised people, predominantly Indigenous people, but also people with disabilities. And so how can I say my life has changed? My life has changed incredibly. The woman that you see today is not the woman I was, even a couple of years ago. I'm what society would call a contributing member. I pay taxes, I go to work, I contribute, and my motivation for beginning the work of a self-advocate has always been to make things better for people coming behind me. That I can't change anything that's happened in my past, but because people like yourself, Emily, and the Centre for Innovative Justice have provided a platform, and they have, like it said in the video, I have been loved, I have been respected, I have been cared about, and I have been given value just as a human being, just treated with common decency and respect. That has allowed me to change and grow in ways that I never knew could ever be possible. In my life for 41 years, I just felt so hopeless, and just such a waste of life. So self-advocacy has absolutely changed everything. And I have the privilege of being able to see, policy changes and changes being made for other people. I think I better stop, Emily, because I can keep going.
Thank you so much, Dottie. Every time you speak, it's always wonderful. And I don't know if you've been noticing, I've been smiling at all the fabulous comments in the chat box about you. So thank you so much, Dottie, and thank you so much for sharing with us something that's really painful and really, really hard to talk about. So
I was letting everyone know I'm back.
Hello, thanks, Justen. So Justen, you have a lot of experience advocating for the rights of people with disability who've been involved in the criminal justice system. Why is that important to you?
It's very important because my experience, and I didn't have a chance. I didn't live a normal life like everyone else. And I started at a young age. I was vulnerable to the homeless and the prison system at a young age. And I wouldn't recommend it for anyone else. And don't want to see any of that else go for the same system as I've been through.
So Justen, when we were doing the Justice for All project, which you were involved in the film, you were involved in the project, you talked a lot about the importance of understanding the trauma experienced by a lot of people with disability. Do you think that self-advocacy can help with trauma?
It goes a long way. Very few people have learned up over the years how to open up about their wounds and trauma. As you may know, it's well and truly buried in people's bodies, and it's been buried for many years. And some people are strong enough to open up about it, reflecting on it. It's brave. Let's say bravery. It's quite brave of people to be able to talk about it.
Thank you. What's it like speaking up?
Well, at first I wasn't like that, but when I started speaking and I started enjoying doing it and getting remarks and feedbacks from it, and I think the more we talk about it, more people understand more about it, and then it'll spread through the younger generations. Well, they don't have it as bad today, but yeah.
You've done some pretty amazing work in New South Wales, Justen. Do you have any comments for us in Victoria?
Well, I've done a couple of speeches in Victoria too, at RMIT and all that, and rally conferences and that. I think it's a very nice place to be doing speeches down in Victoria. I think Victoria are good people, and I think if we put our things together, we can see changes.
Yep, so it's about getting together and doing things together.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Justen. I'm now going to go to Emily. Emily, you're a writer and producer who has experience in film and TV. How was making They Will Use My First Name different for you?
Yeah, I think working as a producer and Maitri on this project, we really wanted to center the stories of people with intellectual disabilities who had been, had contact with the justice system. And it was an area that I hadn't been aware of or explored before in my work. So it was quite a journey for me, and I learned a lot. And I think that what we really wanted to do was to respect and honor the stories that you hear in the film. And I'm proud to say that I think we did that. And I also just want to, extend my gratitude to the people that have shared their stories on the panel today. It is an honor to listen to you and hear you. Yeah.
Emily, one of the things that you've talked about previously is about the arts being a really important place for people with disability to have their voices heard. So I'm wondering, how do you think we support people with lived experience of disability in the criminal justice system to take up that space in the arts that isn't usually open to them?
I think the idea of taking up space is really important, and I think that the first step to that is simply to have the courage and develop the confidence to articulate story, and from there you can find there are people and opportunities out there for you to be able to tell your story. So, start by telling the story to people that you feel safe with, and sort of explore, if it is something that you would like to do to connect with the arts, let people know that, and they will be able to connect you with the opportunities and space to be able to do that.
Thanks so much for that, Emily. I just would like to encourage everyone to put questions in the Q&A box, because we will have time at the end for plenty of questions. So questions are absolutely welcome. Natalie, just wondering if you could tell us a bit about your experience working in disability rights.
And thank you so much to everyone who has shared their very rich, meaningful and valid lived experience throughout that video. That was just incredible. That was almost something like one of those films you see at the National Museum or similar. Absolutely incredible. My experience in disability advocacy stretches over a decade for my whole adult life, and it really started at a grassroots level and then has over time developed into more of a focus of systemic and structural change and reform. The role of lived experience in developing law reform and public policy reform is absolutely essential for all the projects that we work on or the advocacy that we do. I certainly have observed and know that the most successful reform, where success is measured by effectiveness for the people that it impacts, is in fact the reform that is informed by lived experience. So it's absolutely imperative that when we champion reform, we are informed by those who have lived what it is that we are trying to fix. My focus of disability advocacy is predominantly around human rights and the justice system, and inclusion of people with disabilities, and ensuring Australia's compliance with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So frankly, that can look anything like addressing abuse, neglect, exploitation, and violence allegations, or disability discrimination in the community, or access to mainstream services, or of course, inevitably, endeavouring to address the many and various issues with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And so the focus, I guess, of my work really is on the protection and promotion of all Australians with disabilities and their human rights.
Thank you so much for that, Natalie. Just wondering as well, if I could ask you, why do you think lived experience perspectives and lived experience work is so important in reform work?
Using lived experience in reform work has really, in my view, hasn't quite evolved to where we want it to be. It's something that we have started to use more and more in the last sort of 5-ish years, and we've got a long way to go. We're starting to see more and more focus on co-design processes and sort of working through what having lived experience voice means and can look like. However, when we do use it, we are able to go straight to the heart of the problem. We're able to better understand what exactly is wrong, what exactly is the issue, not what a bunch of government officials or bureaucrats think the issue is, not what the human rights lawyers tell you that the issue is, but what do the people who have actually been on the ground and have had that lived experience say is the issue. Because in my experience, they are the people that have the right answer, not the answer that everyone thinks they should have, but the answer that can actually lead us to meaningful change. So in the video, we heard that people who had lived experience of human rights violations in the criminal justice system would like to see a recognition of them and be cared for, to be loved, to be treated in a humane way. And if we listen to that and recreate systems that reflect that, then we are absolutely going to change the system for the better. And so it's imperative, Emily, to make sure that we are actually addressing what is needed, not what we think is needed. When we do what we think is needed, we often oppress people more. You know, we put them in a dispowerful situation. We place them in a perception of being without power. And as we know from Dorothy and Justen and all the advocates, the self-advocates here today, they are the best, the most capable of speaking truth to power. And that is what we need all the time in reform.
Thanks. Thank you, Nat. I think one of the things that is really noticeable for me is that we're very good at listening to stories and we're very good at having feelings about stories, but how do we do that translation from really, really listening, really hearing it and doing the next piece of the work? I guess that's one of the questions that I'm really interested in asking everyone here today is how do we do the next piece? How do we translate this, what we understand from people with lived experience? How do we translate that into a practice?
I think it's a great question to ask everyone, but if I can offer an answer, my view would be re-employ people in reform campaigns. Like Dottie said, you know, one of the most empowering moments of her life today has been when she was employed by the Centre for Innovative Justice. We don't just engage with people with lived experience for a moment of time in the reform campaign. We employ them to lead the campaign. You know, we ensure that they are front of centre all the way along, and then we have them help implement the campaign and the reform. So in my view, we need to stop seeing lived experience self-advocacy as either a nice to have or as being a thing that gets us started and then off we go and we make it happen. It needs to be integrated. It needs to be, in fact, the entire piece of reform is driven by people with lived experience. They should be employed to do it and paid very well for it.
Thanks so much for that, Nat. We might just have a quick look at some of the questions. So we have a question from Catherine Flynn. Thanks, Catherine. What suggestions do the team have with regard to co-design and co-production as a way to create change? So Nat, I wonder if you would like to have a go at that one.
Well, thanks, Natalie. And the start of that question, can you just repeat that for me?
What suggestions do the team have with regard to co-design and co-production as a way to create change?
So in my view, the approach to co-design must be led by those who have lived experience. And so you should bring it in as part of your project, if that's what it is, or your campaign at the outset. So it should be at that foundational level where you're building up your project or campaign team. You would be absolutely building in the co-design or co-production aspects of it. And then as you're building, which or planning your project or campaign, you should see that run sort of end to end. So from the beginning of the planning process right through to the implementation of the campaign or project. And so, and I would also, you know, absolutely encourage, you know, project leaders, universities, institutions who are embarking on these important projects and campaigns to ensure that they listen to people with lived experience to inform the co-design. So actually engage on how people with disability want to be part of the process. Who is best to be part of the process? It's really important that we don't assume that because a person in a wheelchair uses ramps, that they would be the perfect match for a reform for ramps or buildings. You know, it's really, really important that we actually consult and develop a co-design team and process that is informed by people who actually have that lived experience.
Thanks so much for that, Nat. Another question we have is from Claudine Lewis. If we had a magic wand and could change one thing in the Victorian justice system this very minute, what would it be? So maybe I'll ask Dorothy that one first, if you feel like answering it. That's a hard one.
What about Oh, Claudine, bless you. You know, I think it seems like a simple question, but it's actually, I think it's actually quite complex because one, you know, I have finally come to learn there is no magic wand, there is no simple solution. What can the justice system do? But, you know, I am a bit familiar with the work that Claudine does, and I deeply admire and respect her and her team. And what I'm talking about is Claudine's team started to engage self-advocacy groups, which I'm a member of, Voices for Change. So the Department of Justice, whatever their thinking behind the scenes is, but, you know, reached out to a self-advocacy group of people with an acquired brain injury like myself, an experience of the criminal justice system, and started engaging us in, okay, how can we do this better? Or, you know, what can we do differently for people with acquired brain injuries or, you know, special needs or intellectual disabilities that come into contact with the justice system. And to me, that was the starting point, the willingness to begin to have a conversation. So to me, that would be an incredible starting point. And so that would mean acknowledgement that, you know, maybe some things we're doing aren't working very well. I don't want to say too much because I can't see who the audience is, but being open-minded enough to think, you know, there's another way. You know, we could be doing something different and maybe even actually a lot better if, like Natalie so beautifully spoke about, if we start to speak to the people who have had experience of the justice system and yeah, we listen to what they have to say. But then, as you said, Emily, so clearly, and from then the next most important step is, okay, so what are we going to do about it? Because it is one thing to listen, but to me the second most important part is to actually do something with what you've heard. Because you can hear, you know, I can talk about myself and I can rip my chest open and share all sorts of terrible things with you, but if nobody does anything with that, with what I've shared about my experiences, then it's really been for nothing, you know. It's absolutely been for nothing. And I don't do what I do for a feel good, you know, for an hour every time or whatever. My motivation is always about potentially, or my hope is to make genuine change for people, and that to me is what it's about. So I think it really starts with a willingness from the justice system. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Dottie. Natalie, here's a question from Katie Gagliardi, who I know is from Villamanta. Natalie, in your experience around law reform, would you say that the issues and problems raised by people with lived experience are heard and acted upon?
Really good question, Katie. Look, it has certainly evolved over time. So I think that we, in my experience, sort of a decade or so ago, we thought of lived experience contribution as being a focus group, a gift card, a meeting with sandwiches. I had a lot of sandwiches early in my career. Oh my gosh! And then it has developed over time, in my view, to I don't think we're at the top of our game yet, but it's developed to be more an approach of co-design, where we're seeing more, at the moment, we're seeing more reference groups and things like that that do run along projects, but in the disability rights context, if I can speak frankly, it's often a group of able-bodied people that are in the paid roles and running the project or the campaign, and then a reference group that is also paid like a sitting fee or a smaller nominal fee will be made up of disabled people. And I think where we have this, if I can use the words of the law, separation of powers between the reference group and the project or campaign group, or where we had the days of sandwiches where we would have people come in and talk to us about their experience, then no, I don't think we are properly informing reform with lived experience. But frankly, Katie, I don't think that it is because we don't want to or we don't think it's valuable. I think it's because that style of system or structure is actually not built for proper integration of lived experience into a project or campaign. And so, no, we don't get the outcome that we're wanting. And the outcome that we should always want is the reform to directly reflect what lived experience has said needs to be done. So if, heaven forbid, a person with a disability was incarcerated after the reform, having been incarcerated before the reform, through their incarceration, they could immediately and literally point to things in the systems that have changed. In the same way that I, as a wheelchair user, can point to ramps in buildings that were not there 10 years ago, right? So so it needs to be sort of a direct and intimate infiltration into a reform or project. But at the moment, Katie, as you know as well as me, we don't really do it like that. We still see it as this consultative mechanism. So we've got a bit of work to do there. And I think once we do that right, we'll be better informed. But at the moment, we're not quite hitting the mark.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Nat. Katie, thanks, that's suitably depressing.
Oh, no, Katie, it's going to be fine because I'm not eating sandwiches anymore, and we're definitely getting paid nominal fees. And I am sure, paid employment is just a decade away. I'm sure it's coming. It's going to be okay. I promise you all that.
So it's not depressing because Nat's not eating sandwiches anymore.
That's exactly right.
So we have a question from Isabel Alexander. I'm not sure who would like to have a crack at answering this one. Do we know if the politicians intend to make any real changes? That's a difficult one. Does anybody want to have a crack at that one? No.
I said Donnie vigorously shaking her head. I'll have a crack for you if you like. Well, and particularly with this federal election on Saturday, let us turn our mind to this. There is a role to play mostly at a state level, right? The criminal justice law reform. It's definitely the work of your government down here in Victoria, of which is not my home stomping ground. But even at a federal level, you need all levels of government to really be pulling in the same direction on this. And we know, as comrades within the disability rights movement, that there is absolutely a way. Oh, I'm sorry, it's hard to hear me. Oh my gosh. I hope if I speak louder, that might help. Let me know, Loretta. Oh my gosh. I think we need to make sure that all political parties on every side of the fence, going every which way, absolutely understand that disability rights and the criminal justice system is their problem, and they must ensure that it is fixed. They also must be fundamentally aware, especially the federal government on Saturday, must be absolutely aware that they have legal obligations under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to which they are a state party. And so when they report on those obligations, they should think very hard about what they want that report to look like. So it is, in my view, it is absolutely a job to be done by the very strong and active disability rights movement here in Australia to ensure that the politicians of the day understand that this is a time-sensitive, very serious issue. If they do not act now, then the disability community will not vote for them. They will not have it. And we must ensure that we place pressure at every point, every day of an election cycle to ensure that happens.
Thank you so much, Nat. I think excellent. Just wondering, with the three of you left, is there anything else that you would like to add? Do you have any last comments?
There's not much to add, and this has been an incredible conversation to hear people sharing their experiences and their perspectives. I see a lot of people in the chat asking how the film is going to be distributed. The answer that I can give you is that we do have a website called myfirstnamefilm.com, and so after this launch it will be available on that website for you to share, and we do encourage you to share it and raise awareness of these issues. Talk to people about what you've heard here today. Also, if you would like to experience the film in a virtual reality headset, which is what we hope you'll do and what it's designed for, please contact Valid and they will help you out with that. We hope you can experience that because I think it brings another level of experience to the project.
Thank you so much, Emily. Anybody who's here today is absolutely welcome to email or call either Andrew or I if you have any other questions that we haven't been able to answer today. Some of the more personal questions I think that have been asked, we can certainly put those to people and get an answer if you would like an answer to those questions. But if you could email questions, that would be fantastic. I am going to give our panelists a break because they've done an absolutely wonderful job. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. And also thank you for asking such great questions. I think it's been a really interesting conversation that we've had today. The main purpose of our event today was to launch They Will Use My First Name, but it's also a call to action. We think that it's time to do things differently. The film asks you to think about what you will do differently in the future. And we'd really love to hear about what you're going to do differently in the future. Please feel free to email us or contact us if you'd like to talk about anything or if you want to ask more questions. So I'm going to hand back over to Jon now, who's going to close the session for us. Thanks so much for attending, everyone.
Thanks, Emily, and thank you to all the wonderful panelists that you've been listening to today. I was just really interested to hear everybody's perspective and to hear what people were talking about. And I think that you know, just the name of the movie, They Will Use My First Name. I think when Dorothy was speaking and talking about the use of your name, that really came home to me. So thank you so much for that. To wrap up, if you want to share the movie, we want people to you know, share it across as much as they can when you get a hold of it. We'd love to have it to be used as a tool for professional development. I think that's a really good way of using this, and to just make people aware of the situation for people with intellectual disability in the justice system. You can email your thoughts and comments about the film to Emily or to Andrew at Valid. They are just emily@valid.org.au or andrew@valid.org.au. It's a pretty simple email address there. They also have some phone numbers, which they're happy for me to give out to you if you want those phone numbers. The Andrew's phone number is 0488 42236. That's 0488 42236. And Emily is 0477 477851. If you didn't get those numbers, just ring up Valid and you can get the numbers from that way. The websites, the first one that Emily from Maitree talked about was www.myfirstnamefilm.com, which is where the film will be available. And I think that the recording from this session will be available there, I would think. Valid's website is www.valid.org.au. Maitree's website is www.maitreehouse.com. And I guess that's the end of it, really. I'm seeing here that the link to the recording and project website will be sent to everyone via email if we have your emails. If you'd like to view the film in virtual reality, which is the way that it's meant to be viewed, you can please contact Valid, and we have a headset, I believe. Is that right, Emily? Yes, she's giving me the nod. I think we also need to thank all the people involved today. So thank you so much for being a part of this incredible session. And thanks to Peter, who is behind the scenes working all the buttons and dials and probably panicking the whole way through, especially when the sound didn't work. So that was excellent. So I don't know if there's anything more to be said. So thank you for being here, and thank you for taking part and being part of this experience.